I'm attempting to build the cabinets for my laundry because I got a quote on how much it would be to order them, and they came out to be way over my budget. And in the last couple weeks, I spent some time building the cabinet that goes above the washer and dryer, and now I'm ready to build the doors. I built the cabinet out of birch plywood, and because the wood looks so nice, I decided to stain it. And now I need to build the doors to match. One of the challenges is that the edges are not finished, so they will end up looking like this. But there's a way to fix that. And the second challenge is that I've never done this before. So the shaker door is made out of 5 pieces. The frame, which is made out of 2 rails, 2 stiles, and the center panel. Before cutting any material, I had to figure out the exact size of each piece. And since I'm making the doors out of the same materials that I made the cabinets, I still have my leftover materials. And I won't really bore you with the math because this project can look very different depending on your space. To make the frame, I took some of the leftover 3/4 inch plywood I had from the cabinet and I cut it into long strips. 2.5, 2.5. Perfect. The width of the frame on a shaker door can be 2 to 3 inches, so I decided to go right in the middle and do 2.5 inches. And now I'm just gonna chop them down to size. So one trick I like to use to cut multiple pieces of wood to be the same size is using a stop block. And another trick, if I'm cutting smaller pieces, I like to stack them on top of each other and just do one cut across, and that usually works pretty well. So remember when I mentioned that plywood has unfinished edges? Well, I was able to find birch edge banding online, and it's also the same banding that I used to finish the front of the cabinet when I was making it. What I just marked right here is where I'm gonna put the edge banding. Something I learned while doing the edge banding is that after you have it on, you can pass the iron at an angle without putting too much pressure, and this helps the edges glue on properly. When I was making the cabinet, it was the first time I worked with edge banding, and to cut it, I used a utility knife. But now, I think I'm gonna use the right tool this time, and I'm hoping that when I cut off the edges is a much cleaner look. So, let's see. Oh my god, that was so easy. Like, it came right off, but maybe it came up too much over here. Oh, no. You got to be freaking kidding me. Well, it's not perfect. You still have to be careful with that tool. It can take a chunk out. So I guess I'm gonna use this side, which, I really don't like this side. It's so much lighter than the rest. I really did not want to use this side. I don't want to recut it either, so I'm gonna have to use that side. You know when you're doing something and you're not really paying attention, like your mind is just somewhere else, you're just thinking or listening to music and you just... Damn it. Okay, I'm gonna start that over. Well, I wasn't paying attention and I went overboard with these pocket holes. So these pocket holes don't belong there. They don't go anywhere. I only needed to do these right here. This was just a mistake. I drilled these way too close here, and I'm gonna be routing this area where the panel's gonna go, so I decided to just make a third one there. So that was another boo-boo. The next door should be better because I am learning from my mistakes. And that's what's important, that you learn from your mistakes. Okay, so after all that chaos, I went ahead and put the frame together using wood glue and pocket screws, and it actually came out pretty good. You saw me finish the inside of the frame with edge banding, and now I'm doing the same thing on the outside of the frame, which finishes off the door pretty nicely, and it doesn't even look like plywood anymore. Except for my boo-boos, that I'm now attempting to fix with CA glue and wood putty. I then moved on to the second door, which, by the way, it went a lot smoother than the first one. So to route the back of this, I'm gonna be using the router. Give me 1 second, sorry. I'm going to be routing the back of this so this can fit flush. And by the way, this is 1/4 inch plywood, same material, so it's birch plywood, so it will match. I got a whole 4x8 sheet and then I cut it down to manageable pieces. Made my little drawing with all the pieces that I needed to cut. Once I get to those, I'll cut it down to the exact measurements, which is what I'm about to do with this once I route the space on the back of the frame here. Oh, but first, before I do any of that, I'm gonna sand, because it's easier to sand the panel once I have it like this than it's going to be to sand it once it's in here. I did it. Look at it. It looks so good. So now I get to measure the size of the panel so I can cut it exactly to that square there so it can fit in that frame. 9.5 by almost 7. Look at what I just did. So I realized that 3/16 is not enough room to nail it in place, but I didn't have another router bit that would work, so I was just very careful with the rest of it. I filled up the pocket holes using some pre-made pocket holes plugs. I love these, they're very efficient and easy to use. I added wood glue so they would stay in place, and a little bit of brute force. Now I'm filling all the gaps with wood filler, but I'm not sure that this is the best option. The problem with the wood filler is that it's such a different color compared to the wood. The good thing though is that this is the back of the door, so it's not going to be visible. And this is my continued attempt to fix the spots where I messed up earlier, especially where I put the wood filler because the color doesn't match, so I'm using a darker stain marker so that it blends in with the grain. I'm about to do some hinges, They are pretty smooth in the back. They're not really pretty to look at, but no one's gonna look at the back of my doors. So except for me when I opened that cabinet once in a blue moon, because it's like all the way to the ceiling, so I can't even reach it. I'm just gonna put stuff there that we don't use, that just needs to be stored. I know there's prettier ways to make the shaker door where it looks, you know, smooth in the back and the front, but this is my first time making doors, so I wanted to do like a simpler process. And then maybe next time I'll do a little bit more complicated steps, you know, just taking baby steps into this. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm gonna drill the hinges, then I'm gonna test to make sure that they fit, and then I'm gonna stain it and finish them. I'm using a jig from Kreg to make the hinges. They actually have a jig for almost anything in cabinet making, and I love their products. They have made this process so much easier, so I'll link the tools that I'm using in the description below. This jig is pretty cool. It comes with a bit to drill the hole for the hinges, and it helps with aligning and drilling the right depth. Apparently I mismeasured something, because so you can see that is not in the right spot at all. So and we have a door. Look at that. So you probably noticed that the cabinet is super wobbly, but that is because when I tested the doors, I had not secured it to the wall yet. But don't worry, it won't be wobbly forever. Okay, I have doors. Look at that, I have doors. Yes. All right, let me adjust them so that way they're even, and then I'll finish them. Look at it. Look at it. It has doors. I did it. Okay, now for real, I'm gonna finish them. To finish the doors, I apply wood conditioner to avoid blotchiness from the stain, and then I use driftwood as the stain color. To seal it, I use wipe-on poly, which is really easy to apply. You just wipe it on. It's different than how I finished the cabinet because I used the sprayer, but I didn't want to take out the sprayer just for a couple doors, and since they're not going to be heavily used, I think the wipe-on poly will work really well. You're probably wondering what this piece is for. Well, there's a gap between the washer and dryer and the top of the cabinet. And I left that gap there on purpose because if we ever have to get a new washer and dryer and it happens to be taller, this piece is removable and we have the space for it. But this is to cover that gap so that way it doesn't, you know, look funny. And this is the back panel of the cabinet. I haven't forgotten about that. So I still have to cover it so that way it's not open, and when we put stuff inside the cabinet, it doesn't fall through. I am done. I'll be back in 2 hours to do it all over again. Even after all the mistakes, I'm really happy with how these doors came out. Although next time, I don't want to use plywood to make the doors. I'd rather use solid wood. But the laundry is nowhere near done. And on the next video, I get to make the wall cabinets that go next to the washer and dryer.